Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 19 of Monster. So I cried last episode. I cried, I bawled, I squalled. It was wonderful. I love that Monster so far has made me cry twice, like within a span of 5 episodes. So I'm like, that does not bode well for the rest of this series and where I'm at with it. But I've really enjoyed it. And everybody in the comments being very kind and not spoiling has been like, okay, we can't spoil you, Romania, but once you get past episode 17, the show takes off. And I'm like, I'm getting that, which I'm excited. I'm only 1 episode past that. I'm like, all right, let's go, y'all. And Alex Cornejo put it into really good perspective, saying, you know, if you think of this as a 74 episode series and you do the math, which I'm like, I'm an English major, not a math major, not the right side of the brain. They're like, really, you could think of this, you know, where we're at now. Episode 17 is just kind of like, you're barely on episode 3, technically, of a series. And I was like, oh my God. So if we look at it from a 3-act structure, then technically we're just barely into, we're not even through act 1. Not really. Which is terrifying because it's been crazy so far. So I'm like, I don't know what to expect, but that's quite terrifying. So, okay. But I have some comments, just a few before we go into episode 19 here and start it. Royfer had a really cool comment. I did not realize this, but Royfer said that in episode 15, the song When Baby Enters the Room with Nina was actually supposed to be the Ronettes' Be My Baby. Be my baby now. Yeah, it's supposed to be that. But it was changed due to copyright for the version that I'm watching. So I was like, what? What a Neon Genesis twist. But apparently you can find the actual clip on YouTube of Be My Baby. I was like, that makes more sense in the scene because as creepy as the music is, it's not really warranted for Nina's, but Be My Baby, yeah, it has like a big bombastic opening. So I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, that makes much more sense. So it reminds me of when Netflix wouldn't let Neon Genesis air the Fly Me to the Moon, so they replaced it with Ray's theme. It works, but it's not the same. So I'm like, that's fascinating. So thank you, Royfer, for commenting about that and for that little trivia tidbit. Sunray pointed out that, in episode 15, Nina went to the bar called Candy Bar. Womp womp. I was like, oh, that's a pun right up my alley. I was like, that's clever. I was sitting there looking at the title of the bar being like, Candy. Why is it called Candy? There's something to it. And my brain was like not wanting to connect the dots, but Candy Bar, that makes sense. So thank you, Sunray. And then finally, Dana was talking about this idea of Johan isolating people based off of Wolf, like wanting Wolf to be forgotten almost, which is a terrifying concept, right? That not only is Wolf isolated and Johan has killed like all his family and friends, but he talks about like the name and he's like getting down to the point where people don't even know who you are. They just speculate who you are based on your name, which is kind of scary. And so part of me is like, is Johan trying to do that to Tenma and get him isolated? I don't know, right? Because everybody goes, are you Dr. Tenma? Like they just know the name Dr. Tenma, and it kind of defeats the purpose of the person. And it almost reminds me of like when you see or hear of famous figures in history, like whether they're serial killers or whether they're like kings or whatever, you're known just by that title or that name, not necessarily for the person that you are. And that power that a name has. It's funny because they say, you know, names are superfluous in that episode, but names have a power. And so that's so fascinating. Lots of stuff to think about. But before we start this episode, I do want to give a shout out. We have a new person on our philanthropy tier, so I wanted to make note of them. On Patreon, we do a Discord, we do polls. Patrons help me choose which series that I watch next, such as Monster. So we do have different tiers on Patreon. Obviously, if it's a Discord, it's $1. If you want to get access to these episodes a week early, it's $5 for the month. And then we have our philanthropy tier, which are just basically kind-hearted people who are helping me pay the bills. So thank you so much to Edgar, Dana, Tyrone, Anime Annie, Truck, as well as Larry Manning and our newest member, Kenny. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate everything that you all do to help support me, and that you guys are so wonderful, and it helps me to talk about these shows that I love and just have fun with it. So all of my love. Thank you all so much. But I'm really excited for episode 19. I've got a trip coming up, so I'm going to probably record a little bit ahead, more so than usual, so that I'm all set for my trip and I can be away from my computer and come back to Monster and enjoy it. But I'm really excited to see what's going to happen, y'all. I will be honest, I have to taper myself to pace and not binge this series. But each episode has been so rich with details and discussion that I almost feel like I need a break after each episode. I'm like, by the end of the discussion, I'm like, we need to take a few days before we at least go into the next one. So those of you that binged this series, the stamina y'all have. I'm like, did your brains, were they just mush by the end of this? Because there's no way I could binge this series. As much as it's tempting, there is no way, or unless I just mindlessly looked and didn't analyze it at all, I'm like, I would be a pile of goop. So, and not the Gwyneth Paltrow kind. So, we're going to start Monster episode 19 and see what happens. We're starting a new arc, right? Maybe we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's... I didn't even take the wiper off of Whiteboard Coon before getting him out here. Holy crap. Yeah, so yeah, Monsters hit the ground running, and we're just gonna just nonstop go from here. Why not? Oh my god. Oh, so that was an episode. Oh man, like, oh, I feel like last week was a palate cleanser to be like, okay, here's the stuff with Nina, and here's the stuff with our dear sweet Porco, like Mr. Russo, our Porco Russo. He's all great. Here's our sweet stuff there that'll make you cry. Now we're back in it, and holy shit, this episode just diving into the mind of a serial killer and a monster. That graphic at the end with the children's book, I've been waiting for some creepy, disturbing imagery with the children's book to happen. I was like, they're going to do it at some point because this series just seems like it's going to. And the moment where it like crawls into the man's mouth. So yeah, and just analyzing the end with the kid while I'm thinking about it, of the monster and the man, like he comes across the townfolk man and like harbors into his soul, and it gives him strength. And in the children's book, storybook ending there, it seems like the people like him in town, like, oh, you've got all this strength, but I see it going awry as we go, right? I see it going awry, that this is not gonna be a happy ending storybook. Just like, that's so creepy. But yeah, so man, and kind of connecting to Jurgen's feeling the power from that the monster gave him, that motivation. That twist, like I'd already figured it out. I was like, Rudy, it's his mom, Mrs. Compass's mom, and don't you get it, Rudy? And the moment he peeled back the photo and it wasn't him, I was like, rah! So, whoo, this is getting interesting. So I do want to go over this episode because there is a lot going on. And I'm like, oh man, I'm glad that Tenma got out of there. He has had so many like near caught experiences. And at first I was like, Rudy, call him and let him not come. But here's the thing. Rudy is smart, and Rudy figured out that if he told Tenma to leave and he wouldn't get the chance to talk to him on the phone for as long, one, they could have tapped him, I suppose. I don't know if the technology would let them wiretap at that time. I'm not sure. But in any case, if he didn't show up, it would look suspicious on Rudy's part, and then Rudy would get called into question. He's like, I ain't got time for that. So I like that Rudy did call him out, had him come and show up, but then had an escape route plan to get Tenma out of there on time. Good deal. I'm glad we did that. I'm glad that he got out, and it's no skin off of Rudy's back, because Rudy's like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. We were just walking. Why didn't you guys catch him? Good on Rudy. But man, there's a lot of thematic stuff in here that just, whoo. So I want to talk about Rudy. Talk about Rudy here. We're going to put him up here. Our boy Rudy. You know what? Once again, this series, I'm going to use a better color than that one. Once again, this series takes characters that normally would be the side characters we don't care about, and makes them into characters we not only can relate to, but a lot of Monsters characters are ones that have very relatable flaws that I feel like all of us can relate to and have personality traits that maybe we've been there before or we can understand. But the show doesn't paint those character traits up to be bad necessarily or like the worst thing ever. It just, they're humans. They're real people. And this is just how real people are. And it doesn't make them like terrible. But then you have Johan, who is a monster. Yeah, there's stuff under the surface there. So we find out that Rudy, he got divorced 3 years ago. His wife ran away from him. And the reason for that being, he's like, I wish I'd paid more attention for her. At first, when we first saw the cassette tape rolling, I thought it was Lunge, but then Lunge doesn't need a cassette tape. He does it with his fingers. He doesn't need something recording, right? I didn't know if Lunge was using it just for protocol, but no, that's not Lunge's style. So I feel like Lunge, he is estranged from his spouse. And the reason for that is attention, not paying enough attention to her. She didn't feel like he was fulfilling her needs as a person and as a partner. And so she left him. And so, yeah, I was like, well, that instantly relates to Lunge because Lunge is kind of going through the same thing. Although in Rudy's case, Rudy seems to have become self-aware of the flaws that led to their separation, and he kind of regrets it. He's like, I hate that this happened. Whereas Lunge, I don't think Lunge regrets. I don't think Lunge really even cares. He's just like, okay, they're gone. They're not in the way of my job anymore. It's kind of like Lunge is just kind of passive about it, right? And he says, she left me because I paid more attention to this thing, his job, than their relationship. And she said, you're just a collector who peeks into people's hearts. He's like Slugworth off of Harry Potter, kind of, a little bit. So he's just a collector of people's hearts. Which that's such a cold way to look at his profession because he's passionate about learning about people and analyzing them. That's why he's a psychoanalyst. But it's like just taking their profession and being like, you're just a collector of people's hearts. I mean, that's one way of looking at it, but that's fascinating. It's such a cold look of his career, right? And then he's looking over at, okay, Jurgens is just a terrifying concept of a man. Jurgens' character design is terrifying. It's not the fact that he's just like big and beefy and has this little head on this big beefy body or has the mullet. It's the glasses. It's the weird, like there's an anime stereotype where the anime characters have the glasses with the swirls in the eyes. That's what his look like because they're so like cloudy and foggy and dirty. It's like if Melvin from Sailor Moon grew up to be a serial killer and got jacked. That's what I kept thinking of the whole reaction. I was like, but I'm like Serena. But yeah, he's such a terrifying character design. And the fact that you can't see his eyes except for little brief glimpses, but you don't see the whole face as a fit. There's always a barrier there. There's something preventing you from seeing into him. And the concept that the eyes are windows to the soul and we can't see his eyes, it almost makes him seem soulless. So, which is a very intentional character design. So that's so fascinating and it's creepy. He says, Doctor, you've got problems. I love that the serial killer is telling him he has problems. And he says, my talent for fishing around in the abyss of people's heart carries a high risk of me sinking into that abyss myself. That line there is, to me, connecting to Tenma. Because Tenma, the idea where he says fishing in the abyss of hearts carries the risk of sinking to the abyss itself. That's my fear of Tenma. My fear of Tenma is that he keeps trying to find more and more out about Johan. He keeps trying to dig deeper into the psyche of the serial killer, trying to find some kind of justification that he's human, some kind of reasoning as to why he's doing the things he's doing, that Rudy's kind of like, if you keep sinking deeper and deeper, you're going to fall in yourself. Like, you eventually have to break away from it. And Tenma's doing the exact opposite. He's not breaking away. He's diving deeper. And I'm like, is he going to get too deep and not be able to come up for air? That's my fear with Tenma, is he's going to get too deep into this thing with Johan. And then it's just going to lead to him spiraling. It kind of already is, in a way. But yeah, so he talks about your fourth victim being an 18-year-old girl. Do you remember the sexual arousal you felt when you chopped her up? So there's this concept of, get on here with a different color, but there's this concept of the reasons we act and think, right? There's a concept behind that. So he's trying to link, Rudy is linking with Jurgens this idea of murder because it elicited a sexual response. So he's basically saying you killed these women because you got an arousal out of it. It like affected you mentally in terms of getting sexually aroused, and that's why you killed these girls. Like, it's just trying to analyze why he did the things that he did, right? And provide a reason for the murder, right? Because everything has to happen for a reason, right? Everything has to have a reason behind it, right? That's kind of like the thing with Johan, is the idea that Tenma believes that Johan has a split personality. And that's why he's doing the things he's doing. But I like how Rudy kind of calls him out on it. He's like, wait, so you believe that there's two Johans. There's a Johan killing all these people and a Johan trying to stop the murders? I'm kind of with Rudy. I don't think that's it. I don't think Johan's trying to stop. I don't think Johan has a personality that's trying to stop the murders. No, I don't think that's it at all. I think that he may have tendencies that are attributed to something else. If we find that out, sure. But I don't think there's two personalities. I don't think it's like a disorder. I think that Johan, he is intentionally killing people, and he is being like this mastermind orchestrator, like leading people around. He is leading Tenma on a rat race and just has him, he's pulling the carrot in front of him and dangling it, but he is in control of where the carrot goes, right? I don't think. Rudy kind of believes, Rudy's like, people think serial killers are introverted. Not always. He says that killers, they can be extroverted, and there's other stuff he says too, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah, so he just basically talks about, you know, why he did the things he does. And so that's when Jurgens brings up, he's like, ask me about the 12th murder. What's fascinating here is that it almost seems like Johan directed him, that if he was caught, that he needed to bring up the 12th murder to this random man. There's so much that's being set up here, right? There's so much that's being set up, right? Where you have Johan is a researcher. He looks into people's past. He looked in the past of Jurgens, found out about this psychology. Now, how he knew about his childhood, that's a real good question, right? That's a real good question, right? How he knew about his childhood. Okay. And again, way back when we were talking about Kinderheim, somebody was like, it's related to Spy Family. And I'm like, okay, well, Spy Family is related to people being psychics. So is Johan a psychic? That's still weird to me, and I don't want to know. I don't want anybody in the comments to confirm or deconfirm. Just bite your hands and let me be. But if Johan is a psychic, that would be rather helpful in being a serial killer. It would be. I don't know if I'm ready for Monster to have supernatural elements to it. I kind of like that Monster is very grounded in realism. I'm not sure I'm ready for there to be a psychological supernatural element like Johan being psychic. However, if he were psychic, he would be able to look into Jurgens' brain or something. But that's not even psychic. That's like something else. Like, that's not even... I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like that. Because I'm like, well, if he was psychic, could he look into Jurgens' past and memories? That's not really being psychic. Psychic is reading people's minds, not necessarily looking into their memories. That's something entirely different. So I don't know. How he found out about Jurgens' past, I don't know. That's a question, but we'll just leave it. We'll just leave it. I don't want to know anything about it. Please, in the comments, don't say a word about what I've just said. If you're in the Discord, black box and talk amongst yourselves. I don't know. But he somehow found out about Jurgens' childhood and how he was raised. It's really creepy that he set up that entire room to be, but yeah, psychics they don't look into memories, they read minds. But unless this is something that Jurgens thinks about constantly, I guess maybe it's something he constantly brings himself back to. Maybe him killing younger women is connected to his mom making him look at the young, like the very young feminine looking doll as a kid. Maybe when he killed those girls, he kept thinking about that memory of him and his mom and the storage room. Maybe he kept thinking about that. And if Johan is psychic, then maybe that's how he was able to recreate that scene. I really hope I'm not spoiled on that, because that would have been such a cool surprise, but I don't know. I'm just gonna hold off and be like, maybe it's not, maybe he's not psychic, maybe that's just my theory. Though, although it's gonna suck really hard if he is psychic and I've been spoiled since like episode 8. But what can we do? Can't go back now, so we just gotta work with it. But yeah. But it does seem like Johan wanted Jurgens to bring up the 12th murder. Again, now I'm going back to this. I'm getting off track because I was getting pissed about being spoiled. So, in any case, Johan researching, he probably discovered that Rudy was connected to Tenma from med school, and that he's a psychoanalyst working for this police firm. So it would not be against reason that Johan would have done his research, been like, oh, hey, this guy knows Tenma. They went to med school together. He now is a psychoanalyst working for this police department. And this guy that's a murderer just happens to be in the area. We could get him booked and get caught. And then I'll have him tell, like, Johan's playing damn 4D chess here, right? So he's like, I'll have the guy Jurgens tell Rudy about this murder. And then I know that Tenma, if he's in the area, will likely go to Rudy for advice about me. I just feel like Johan is leading Tenma around like with a carrot on a stick, and is leading him, like playing the Pied Piper and leading him exactly where he wants him to go. Now the question is, to what end? What's the point, right? Why is he bringing Tenma on this crazy goose chase? Unless his idea is that he wants to break Tenma. I mean, there's a part of Johan that seems thankful that Tenma, saved him, but then there's another part of me that's like, why did you want your sister to kill you? So are you mad that Tenma brought you back? What? And then of course, regardless of how he feels about Tenma saving him, there seems to be a part of Johan that wants people to suffer, and he wants people to stare into the abyss, right? To stare into the monster's abyss, as this episode's called, and look at true fear. And I feel like maybe he is trying to get Tenma to that point of true fear. He's going to try to break someone that seemed infallible and like a white knight on a horse. That's where we're at right now, and maybe we'll see where it takes us, right? But so Hannah Kampf of Kropp's house, she was 52. She doesn't meet any of his other criteria, right? So yeah, so his crimes are sexual murders. We find out with Jurgens. He confessed to a 12th murder, though. Again, this series has the ability to make you feel so tense and so like on the edge of your seat. Like when the door creaks open in Rudy's office, I'm like, I'm done. I was like, nope, I'm out. So, but it's Tenma, right? And so Tenma just looks so tired. I feel like he's taken Dieter somewhere. Or where is Dieter? That's a great question. Where is Dieter? Did he leave him with Heckle? What? I feel like we missed a step. Did he leave him with Heckle? Okay. So questions on here. We don't see Dieter. Was he left with Heckle while Tenma goes after Johan? I feel like the next episode we need to backtrack and find out where the hell Tenma took Dieter and where he left him at, because I don't foresee. I mean, Schumann told Dieter to look after Tenma and make sure he didn't go off and do something crazy. So where is Dieter? Was he waiting on, I mean, he gave him a bus thing. I guess maybe Tenma met back up with Dieter after he got on the bus. Maybe he met back up and the bus was just his escape, right? The bus was just his escape to get out of there. Maybe that was just the case, and then he met back up with Dieter afterwards. I'm gonna assume that. I'm gonna not assume Tenma just left him with Heckle forever, because, sir, I gave you more credit than that. But maybe he just left him with Heckle temporarily, and then went off to go find Rudy and talk to him, and then is taking the bus back to Dieter. I feel like we've not seen the last of Dieter for sure. No. What's interesting is that Johan, Tenma in this case, Tenma is just tired. He's exhausted. He's conflicted. He knows he's going to kill Johan, but he wants to understand Johan before he does so, to kind of understand if there's any way to reach him. And his tired exhaustion reads to Rudy like he's looking down on him still. And the thing is, he's never looked down on Rudy. That was the thing. Tenma had a moment of resting bitch face in college, right? That's fascinating, right? And maybe, what we don't know is maybe Tenma actually looked up to Rudy, or even though he didn't know him, he knew he was a good student. It was like, oh, okay, this guy's great. And then saw him cheating and being like, oh, and like it knocked him down from that pedestal. But that's fascinating to know by the end that Tenma never looked down upon him at any time, and that he was cheating too. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, Rudy is he's not on board with him at first. And it's kind of funny because Rudy sort of flexes at the beginning of this episode, where he kind of like wants to show off to Tenma and be like, well, we psychoanalysts, we know certain things that other doctors don't, right? He tries to like flex his skills a little bit in that first conversation, being like, well, you wouldn't understand how a serial killer's mind works. You're just a doctor. And I'm like, and there's like a hint of resentment there, honestly. But Tenma being like, I need you to tell me what you can about Johan based on what I say. And so what's funny about this is that when he asks Rudy first if he thinks he could be a serial killer, Rudy says, I don't know. And now we know that Rudy was saying that kind of like out of passive aggressiveness. And I'm sure he doesn't think that Tenma was likely a serial killer. And by the end of the episode, he definitely doesn't think. He thinks he's innocent, right? Because he finds the letters. Now, this does not bode well for Rudy, because he's found the letters from Johan. I could see Johan being like, get you out of there. You know too much. You know that Tenma's innocent. And Tenma's whole thing is he's not trying to prove his innocence. I feel like Tenma has fully accepted that once Johan is gone, if he's captured and put to prison, he won't care. He just wants to stop Johan. That's like all he cares about, right? I feel like that's where we're at with his character. He's not trying to prove his innocence. He's just trying to, in his mind, do the right thing and help to stop Johan from killing anybody else. I feel like that's where we're at with his character. So yeah, he analyzes the letters and tells Tenma that, just because you think a serial killer is introverted, that's not always the case. And I like the flashback we get. Like, Rudy hasn't changed very much. He looks pretty much the same as he did back as a med student. But he says this Japanese student came to the school and his situation as top student changed completely. He was sociable and popular with everyone. Yeah, and of course, Tenma just has this natural radiance to him that draws people to him. Kind of like Johan, if I'm being honest, right? So yeah, Tenma and Johan both have this natural charisma. They draw people to them like a moth to a flame, right? Isn't that something? So again, the monster in the opening, is it Tenma and Johan? Is it Johan and Nina? Is it, I at this point, I kind of think it's more Tenma and Johan are the monster splitting in two, right? But the question is, if they're both monsters, what do we do with that? So I'm fascinated by this concept, but they both have natural charisma and they're both very sociable. And the thing about it is being persuasive, because it's almost like Tenma, he's persuasive through his kindness and his compassion, where he like gets you on board with his ideas because they're so like from his heart, right? Whereas Johan uses fear and power to persuade people. But not only that, but then we get with Jurgens, it's not just fear and power. It's this idea of seemingly, I don't want to say compassion, but it's kind of like he sort of like forces this camaraderie. Like he kept sending, it's a very shrewd move that Johan targeted Jurgens and started sending him all these letters. And Jurgens hated it at first, but it's like a Stockholm syndrome thing where he kept sending him the letters and then eventually started like weaning back. And it was almost like a Pavlovian addiction where Jurgens was like, well, I want the letters. I was really starting to like those. And that's when he starts receding back, so that when he gives him the letter, then he's definitely going to read it and is likely to be persuaded by the contents of it. It's genius. Like Johan is a psychoanalyst in himself. He seems to understand the human mind very well, which is terrifying, right? Because Tenma seems to understand human hearts, but maybe not human minds. What do we do with this? And so he says that he had done perfectly in his classes except for his last test on medical law. I like that it's medical law that Rudy struggles with. I like that medical law, where it's like what is right and what is wrong is kind of what he struggles with. And then that's kind of juxtaposed with the fact that he was cheating on that test for medical law. It's kind of ironic. But I want to go back to that look that Tenma gives him when he looks at the notes, and he looks and cheats on it. He's like, he played his last card. I like he refers to him in the third person here. The only way he could get a high score. But then he looks over and Tenma's just staring at him. And what's interesting is that Tenma just was looking at him. We don't see anything else with it. But it's almost like he just looked at him and was like, oh, okay. But he read so much into it. So what's interesting is, and that's really relatable, is that Rudy overthinks. He overthinks, but doesn't confront. He doesn't confront Tenma about it. He just never says anything else about it. And he stews on it for years. And it's something he vividly remembers. So it's clearly affected him psychologically, right? Which is the irony, since he's a psychoanalyst, you'd think he would be one to talk to him. But that's kind of the irony of it, is that he doesn't talk to Tenma about anything. He just lets it sit and stew, right? So that's so fascinating. But yeah, and then it's something embedded in his memory, how Tenma acted to him all those years. But so many of us overthink things. Like I can be a big overthinker, and I can get inside my own head sometimes and be like, oh, why'd I do that? That was really dumb. And if you don't talk to that person about it, you never know. And then it just festers and stews and just becomes more than what it should be, right? And I feel like that's some kind of, the mangaka is giving us Rudy as an example to show us something that is very relatable to all of us. But the idea of cheating and the idea, grab that, and the idea that Tenma cheated too, right? The idea that we are all human. Because yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a teacher. I teach, professionally for a career. But when I was in high school chemistry, did I write in did I take my graphic pencil, my little, you have your little lead pencil. Did I take that and write on my calculator cover chemistry equations and sit it in the sunlight so I could kind of look at it while I did my test? Yes, I did, because I was sucked at chemistry and I was like, I need to get a good grade on this test. Yeah, I did it. Has it affected me? Not really, but I remember doing it, right? And so whenever, a student, usually most of my exams are open book, because I'm like, do I really expect you to memorize this concept? Is it going to matter in the long run? I'd rather you be applicable and use an application and show me how you can apply a term than memorize what it is. Because usually when people memorize, they cram and then they forget about it. I'm like, no, let's put it into practice instead. So on tests and stuff, I'm not a big test person. I would rather see you apply it correctly than memorize just what it is. So I'm like, But yeah, it's just all about being human. And Rudy puts Tenma up on a pedestal and says, oh, well, you look down on me. You were this great person. And Tenma's like, I didn't think I was this great person that was better than anyone. And now we can argue that, Tenma has had kind of like a little bit of a not not pretentious standpoint, but there are parts where he's been towards the beginning of the series very naive, right? But I do think that this is a nice touch on everyone makes mistakes, and a lot of people will do things like cheat on a test or something to get through in life. It's not the end of the world. It's not like you're killing people, right? So yeah, but Rudy goes his entire life thinking something about Tenma that isn't the case. And the thing about it is that influences Rudy to go to the police. Like, originally, he makes a misconception about Tenma based on their past, and it leads him to go to the police. And then when he finds out he was wrong, he's like, oh shit, I've got to course correct. And, you know, Rudy's conscience lets him not let Tenma get caught, which I'm glad about. I was really nervous he was going to get caught in this episode. I was like, ugh. And so I do agree with Rudy that I don't think that Johan has a split personality that's trying to stop the murders. I don't think that's it. I think that it's very possible. He says they're all big fat liars. And Tenma clenches his fist at that when he says they're all big fat liars. He clenches his fist because, that kind of makes a fool out of Tenma. Where he says serial killers are all liars. Because, yeah, it makes a fool out of Tenma for, like, believing it. It makes a fool out of Nina for believing it. But, if we're looking at it from Lunge's perspective and Tenma's the killer, then Tenma's been lying about everything. So, which we know is not true, right? But it explains why Lunge maybe believes the things that he does. If Lunge is convinced that Tenma is the serial killer, and we're going by Rudy's philosophy here, then he probably views Tenma as a liar that can't be trusted. And so maybe Tenma's realizing, like, crap, everybody believes I'm the killer, and as long as they believe that, they're not going to believe what I have to say. So it's just adding another layer to that, right? That serial killers are going to lie to get what they want out of a situation. And then, yeah, Tenma says, are you saying he's just been playing with me? Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind Johan is playing with Tenma. Very much. But to what end and why? That we don't know. That has not been revealed. Why does he want Nina? That is also a question as well. But Rudy does say we shouldn't rush to conclusions. He's like, let's not get too ahead of ourselves, right? And so then we go back to the idea of the monster when he's back with Jurgens. And he says, of course monsters exist inside of you, inside of him, even inside of me. Which I felt very called out in this episode. Because in a previous discussion, I was like, monsters live everywhere. I was very much like Rudy in this episode. I was like, saying the very academic, philosophical thing, right? But Jurgens is like, no. You're just giving this polite little Miss America answer for this. He's like, stop it. He's like, your academic nonsense. And then I love that he's like, I'm saying monsters really exist in this world. And we get like the close-up of his eyes. Oh. And I love like him just strangling him and stopping the other guy from coming. Like, he could have killed Rudy then and there. Of course, what would have been the point? Because again, if we're going with why he killed those women, that Jurgens would have got nothing out of it. So that's a tie-in too. The idea of the serial killers, they want something out of it. And Jurgens doesn't kill Rudy because he wouldn't get the sexual satisfaction that he got from killing the other women. So there's no point. Johan gets something out of killing people. He gets true fear, right? And to witness that. And he's like, are you scared? And just that thing about him saying, are you scared, huh? With the teeth and everything. Oh, he's like, there are much more frightening things in this world. He's like, I'll let you know something good. And he says, go to the basement. And the thing about it is that when Rudy tells the police about Tenma, he says, if you arrest him, I'd like to use him for research. He's a fascinating criminal. And I was like, Rudy! I was like, Tenma's not a criminal. I mean, yeah, he's evaded police, but he's not killed anybody. And so they send him to the basement storage room. Now, the thing about this is, And again, I'm coming from like a Western U.S. perspective. In modern times, usually if somebody's killed, they like board up the house, they lock it up. You can't just walk into the house post murder and be like, I think I'll look around. Like, yeah, that's just like. But again, this is the '90s in Germany, totally different world, totally different time period. I'm just, it's hilarious now because I'm looking at this going, there is no way in hell that would happen in modern times. You wouldn't just walk through the front door and go into the basement of this murder victim's house. They would have guarded that sucker. Although, going in the basement, like, why? Why? And then the time Johan took to replace all of these photos with pictures of Jurgen's, what the fudge? And arranging it to look like his childhood thing. What the fudge? And the creepy doll with long hair. And so he goes back to the tape where Jurgens talks about it. He's like, he changed this storage room to look like the room from his childhood. And then, yeah, it's peeled off that it was a picture of Johan. So the comp woman was one of the women that took Johan in as a kid. So again, Johan seems to be, slowly but surely, Johan is erasing his past connections. Everything that would connect him to who he is erasing. Why? We don't know. What's the point of it? What's happening? Yeah, Jurgen's face was put on top of the child's face. That boy is definitely Johan. And then Jurgens talks about him knowing about me. He wrote in an overly familiar way, which, like, he would know him. And just, nope. So, yeah, if he was psychic, I guess he could know things about him that Jurgens wouldn't have told anybody. And then one day he called me with the letter. Go look in the basement of that mansion. And he had it all set up. He had it all set up for him to come. He was like, I was confused. There was a storage room in the basement. What's going on? Is Miss Kampf my mother? Like, that's the creepy thing, is that he set it up to look so much like Jurgen's childhood that it was to the point where he was questioning whether the woman was his mom. Like, that's the kind of power Johan has over people, is that the power that he has over people is just like, it's unreal. It's unreal. So I'm just like, oh my God, the power that he had to convince this man Jurgens that he was possibly, that woman was his mom, when he probably knows it's not, is terrifying. And that kind of relates to the idea of Lunge, like the power Johan is having to maybe make Lunge suspect that Tenma's the killer, right? It's just the fact that it's delving into the human mind and the idea that you convince yourself of what you want to believe, right? That's been a theme in other shows that I've been watching, is the idea that you yourself, truths have a little bit of a lie embedded within them. And the idea that you believe the truth that you want to believe, right? You can be very influenced by something based on how much you want to believe it. And that's kind of the case with Jurgens here. But yeah, asking if it's his mom or not. And he's like, I went up to the second floor and killed her. It was a letter demon. So of course, I like that Rudy is like, okay, well, if Johan was sending him letters, then would he have sent the woman letters too? To like convince her that there was a killer coming. And then I love the animation and how like fast-paced, intense it is. He's just looking really fast. Like the animation, flawless. And then he finds the package of letters. Like a whole damn case of letters that were sent to her. And each letter has like been written like Johan's handwriting. And it's just like each one, it had like a very Shining feel where it's like you just keep opening it and it's the same handwriting, same letter. They're messages Johan left me. And Rudy's like, they're all the same. And it's like, oh my God, it's the same 2 letters sent over and over again. Nope. That's horrifying. Nope. The same 2 sent over and over again. Nope. That's so freaking terrifying. And maybe it's like, yeah, nuh-uh. I'm like, okay, so he basically he tormented her until she died. And I feel like he's setting Tenma up the same way, and maybe Nina up the same way. I don't know. It's so creepy. But my thing at first, I was like, Rudy, you are collecting all these guys here to scope out Tenma. And I'm like, you better help him get out of there, because I'm not going to be happy if you let him get caught, right? And I love this shot of the two of them in front of the water fountain. He's like, I analyzed what you said. He's like, I thought you had made it up. But no, you were right. And Tim was like, come on. And of course, there's this festival happening right around that time that they can easily go into the crowd with, right? And so he asked Tenma if Tenma looked down upon him as they're walking into the crowd. And he says, do you remember I used that hidden paper to cheat on the exam? And then he shows him the paper that says, run, you're surrounded by the police. And he's like, don't look, just walk. And that's when he gets him into the crowd. And just the juxtaposition of all the children with the balloons screaming, and cheering and laughing. And we just had an episode focusing on how a serial killer, replaced pictures of himself with another serial killer to encourage him to kill his mother or his foster mother. I'm like, monster, what are we doing? Why? He said, Jurgen had killed at the request of his friend. And then shows him the picture where it's like the face is completely taken out. And there's such a Twin Peaks creepy surrealist where he sees the black background and the face of Johan is completely empty. There's nothing there. It's creepy monster vibes, y'all. He's like, it was in her storage. And Tim was like, she didn't have any children. So the creepiest thing is, yeah, she took Johan in for a time and then he left. He's like, the Johan you spoke of and Jurgen's friends are probably one and the same. And just Tenma just slowly backing out, being like, why? Why is it him? Why? Of course. So creepy. And the police, meanwhile, they're not sure what the hell's going on. They're like, Tenma might have a gun. Very astute. He definitely does. He's like, she had kept the letters at the same messages as the letters he left you. He was feeding off her. And when her use had run out, he disposed of her. So again, that ties back to the ending with the monster going in the man's mouth. The monster invading and feeding off of him and using him to move the tree, so we think. But then once that use had ran out, is he going to leave the man and exit the mouth and go to someone else? Yeah, he just disposed of her after that. But what did he use her for? That's the question. It could have been to eliminate his past, just like you said. But then we see the two kids run by, and it's a boy and girl that are blonde. So that makes me instantly think of Nina and Johan. But Rudy says that he's innocent. He believes that Tenma's innocent. He's like, from what I analyzed, I can tell you this. That I don't know how, but Johan can sniff out the killers. He's got a magnet. He has a magnet for the killers. He's able to find them pretty easily. Oh my God. He's able to find him. And on top of that, he can isolate them and control them. Which, the thing about it is, okay, saying that Johan isn't psychic, but he could, some people, just have a natural radar for finding certain types of people. But you could say that Johan might be able to, maybe he just has a personality that can naturally seek out people and understand their characters. Some people are really good at reading characters. Maybe Johan's one of those individuals. And I love just how sour and angry that Tenma looks when he sees, Rudy say, he can isolate and control people. He has a tendency to sniff them out, isolate, and control them. Tenma's just pissed off at that. Because it's suggesting that Johan is in control of this situation and is possibly controlling him. Even though Tenma isn't a killer, he's still being targeted and controlled by Johan, which he's not about, right? And he's isolating Tenma too. He's isolating Tenma like he was isolating Wolf. And it could be that he's controlling Tenma to do certain things like he's been controlling Wolf. So yeah, Johan is very much a puppet master. He is controlling things from the shadows. And isolating people and leading them on these breadcrumb trails to do what he wants them to do. It's quite terrifying, and I can tell that Tenma hates it. He's like, I can't find the case where Johan had killed his foster parents after adolescence. And he's like, it's probably because he thought foster parents weren't necessary anymore. So yeah, so basically we don't have any trace of foster parents with him after he was a teenager, because he probably did stuff on his own. That's what Tenma's saying. Okay, so it was just from his childhood. And then Rudy says, I could think of something else. He found his ideal family and joined it. Which is a terrifying concept, that Johan did find a family and he's been with it ever since. That is a terrifying concept. So there is this idea that this ideal family is what Johan has now. And he's just trying to erase his past. Why? I mean, maybe because he doesn't want to get caught. And that's just smart on his part, erasing all connections to him that would lead back to him. But I'd never thought of the idea that Johan had found a family. I just assumed that whenever Johan became an adolescent, that he just went off on his own. But here's the thing. The found family, what if the found family is Nina and Tenma? But what if he wants to make a little family with them? Because he called Tenma like a parent. So maybe he wants to create a family with Tenma and Nina, and he wants to erase everything else around them. Monster. I don't like where this is headed. Does he have a reason for doing it? Well, yeah. Is he joining his family for some reason? Yeah. What? So much mystery. So many questions. Monster's going to drive me crazy. I can already tell. And for what reason? Why would he want this family to all be joined together? I don't know. But we get to the bus terminal with the 5 different buses. And he gives him the ticket. I wanted to go back and look at that ticket. But yeah, so why would he want Nina and Tenma to join him? Why? What's the purpose? Is he trying to set it up where Tenma and Nina will be wanted by the law and they have to go to Johan? They have to end up being with him? I don't know. I feel like I've done this all episode because I'm like, there's so much mystery. So he gives him the ticket and they're like, find out what bus he's on, and then they're going to surround it with squad cars. And I love them just running after it. But the bus he has is to Ainsel to Hattingen. Interesting. I've already got you a ticket. And then he says there are still ways to prove that you are innocent. And he says that he'll help him. But again, everything Schumann's tried to do, that Rudy's tried to do, Tim was like, I'm not going after Johan to clear my name. I'm going after to kill him. And that's when Rudy's like, wait, what? He's like, what? No, he's like, you're not trying to do anything. And he's like, you look like an interesting fellow, but I never had a chance to meet you. But we're finally friends, aren't we? And he's like, but you saw me cheat. And he's like, you lifted your head and looked my way. And Tim was like, oh, well, I was cheating too. He didn't want him to be So it's like Tim was like, I was cheating too, and I didn't want you to tell anybody either. Damn it. Damn it, Tenma! And that's when Rudy realizes, oh, I was wrong this whole time. And the buses all left at once. And they left Rudy by himself. So yeah, then we have that creepy ass book at the end. So yeah, I know it's very hard not to spoil me. I realize that. I apologize for making you all sit there sitting on your hands, waiting to type things, but the mystery of this show intrigues me so much, and I love being surprised by it. And so if my theories are wrong, I actually prefer when my theories are wrong, because I like being surprised. I like when shows have twists and turns and they're not predictable. And so if I'm wrong, that's going to be great. If I'm right, what do we do? So I'm very, very, very intrigued after this episode. This episode was just like, ba-bam, we're back in this. Hope you dried your tears, because now there's going to be insanity. So, but this was a very self-contained episode. So where do we go to from here? feel like it's just a constant barrage of setup, and it's going to lead to a payoff, but I'm not sure I'm ready for the payoff. So, in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I hope you all enjoyed this discussion. Take it easy as best as you can. And I'll be back very soon with episode 20 of Monster.